Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. Oh boy, folks, we are in for a treat tonight. It's very rarely that a movie sneaks up on me the way this film did. I really dove into a trailer the Wednesday before it opened on Thursday, and still was able to get opening night tickets last week, and man, am I glad I did. This movie, what a spectacular gem. Oh, so much good stuff to get into. So you know the drill, folks. Pull up a chair. Take a seat. Right now, we are about to dive in non-spoiler, spoiler-free, if you will, on Upgrade. Yes, Upgrade. Oh, man, what a fun freaking movie. Love this start to finish, man. Was so surprised. I had, again, because it snuck up on me, I kind of had, mediocre expectations. This looks pretty cool. Blew me away, man. This film is super impressive and really a disappointment that it didn't get better marketing, and we'll talk about that leading into its opening weekend last weekend, because it was a fairly light weekend as far as competition goes, and this movie should have crushed and dominated the box office. It's that good. I'm very interested to see what it does this weekend because it got a lot of hype and talk early on in the week. So that being said, before we jump into all of the goodies, let's just brief set up the movie and let you guys know what this movie's about. Directed by Leigh Whannell. Lee comes to us from the Saw series. He wrote the first 3 Saws. He also wrote the Insidious universe and all of the movies there, and he directed Insidious 3. Kind of disappointing on that end, and had I known about this movie and kind of been following it, I would have been very interested to see where it was going to go, and maybe even a little apprehensive had I known, been able to look into it more and been like, oh man, this is the guy that did Insidious 3. Man, talk about a rebound for good old Leigh Whannell. He nails this flick. No stumbling blocks here whatsoever. Maybe a couple rough spots, but he really just an absolute gem with this movie. And he also is the writer, so he's the writer and director. It's his second directing movie. He is, like I said, quite experienced in the writing department. The writing, again, very good here. It stars Logan Marshall Green, who plays Gray, who's married to his wife named Asha, played by Melanie Vallejo. And essentially, we come to find out that we're in a futuristic world where, technology is very, very dominant, and Logan Marshall Green has kind of detached himself as much as humanly possible from technology. He likes to work on old muscle cars, and actually gets a gig to refurbish one of these for this technological genius named Aaron, who is played by Harrison Gilbertson. And what we come to find out is Aaron's company is actually a competing company with Asha's company. After they drop he asks Asha to follow so that he'd have a car to go home in. Her car, technologically advanced, can drive itself. So they, they're kind of riding home or whatever, and your worst nightmare in a world where a car can drive itself happens, and the car appears to malfunction, leads to a crash, and we are quickly... We quickly learn that this crash was probably not accidental, as a group of masked men kind of show up, kill Logan Green's wife, so Gray, Logan Marshall Green plays Gray, kill Gray's wife right in front of him. He watches it, and then they knock him out, and when he wakes up, he's in a hospital, and he is paralyzed from the neck down. After hearing about this, Aaron kind of reaches back out to Gray and is like, I can help you. Before we get there, though, we do get to see Gray's house is now very technologically advanced. A lot of the Tony Stark arms are kind of moving around. They do everything for him. They cook, they clean, they give him his medication. Everything in the house is operational. It's very Tony Stark-esque. Tony Stark-esque. Ash, I don't know where my mouth is going today. We're struggling. But I swear, we will get through. And from there, you can kind of see that it's irritating him. Because like I said, Gray has kind of removed himself as much as he can from technology. And like I said, Aaron reaches out to him. Hey, you made this awesome muscle car. Let me help you. He has technology. It's actually a computer about this big that they're able to insert into his spine And the computer from there can take over Gray's body and give him the ability to walk and use his limbs again. Gray reluctantly says yes, and sure enough, everything works the way you would expect it to. The computer allows him to move, and from there, we go on this awesome revenge story. The big driving force for him is he wants to find the killers of his wife. And we get a wonderful, action-packed revenge flick that I just was not ready for. But before I dive into all the good things I loved about this movie, you know how I roll. We start with the bad, we end with the good, so you guys have a good taste in your mouth, and hopefully go catch this flick. And this one, I am really pouring everything into. Go see this, because it is that good and totally worth a watch. Look, my biggest issue with this movie, like I had mentioned earlier, is that it didn't get picked up by a big studio. Blumhouse has a phenomenal track record as far as cranking out movies that are really, really good, really compelling, and that make tons of money because they're low budget. Now, something like Get Out, which was also a Blumhouse film, was picked up by Universal and thus got all the marketing it deserved and, performed the way it should have. In this situation, Blumhouse didn't have anybody to pick up the movie, so Blum Tilt did the marketing, kind of a composite inside of the Blumhouse world. And they only used about $15 million in marketing, most of which was digital oriented. And it's sad because this movie deserves a full marketing campaign, because I think it would make so much money. And I'm really, like I said, interested to see what it does this weekend after word of mouth has kind of gotten out on this flick. The other thing, again, isn't really a terrible thing, but just like I wanted more. The action in this movie is so good, I wanted more than what I got. But, that's not a real big gripe. There are some plot elements in the movie that are a little rough around the edges, a little clunky. But they're spaced out and very sparse. And if you watch it, it's not a flawless movie, but it's real close. Because the flaws it has are very small within the plot, and as I said, no spoilers, so we won't really dive into that. So we'll get to the last thing for me that was an issue. And towards the end of this movie, it freaked me out because I was so in love, and then something happens at the end of the movie that makes me go, no, you just ruined a really good movie! And then, like 30 seconds later, I go, you just made a really good movie a whole lot better, because you tricked me for a second. I was nervous, but the delivery of what happens at the end, spectacular. Absolutely loved it, and totally sets up the ability for this franchise to maybe become a franchise, and maybe take more stories going forward with Gray and the software in his neck called STEM. Now, that's all I gotta say on the bad, so let's dive into all the good. And like I said, it starts at the top with Leigh Whannell. As I said, wrote the first 3 Saws, wrote all the Insidious movies, directed Insidious Chapter 3, which was, like I said, not great, but man, really rebounds here and delivers a movie that, for me, is a combination of John Wick meeting Crank. And for those not familiar with Crank, Jason Statham movie from the early 2000s, I believe, where basically in order for him to not die, he has to be on high-octane adrenaline the whole movie. So it's just all of this ridiculous action that makes no sense. From a physical or, actual perception. None of this stuff could actually happen in the movie. And there are elements like that with the action. The action in this movie, very high-octane, jacked up, So for me, it's John Wick meets Crank, Curveball meets Ex Machina. Yeah, with the fact that we're dealing with a computer AI system, there is kind of a Ex Machina vibe to it. Aaron's entire apartment and house complex kind of has an Ex Machina vibe to it, and I love all 3 of those things, kind of working from elements of all 3 of those things into this flick. That's just wonderful. And since we're talking about our director and writer, this movie starts its success with the style, man. It is just style, style, style. I loved so many things in this movie that were things I hadn't seen. This is a non-spoiler, but the opening credits do not appear. We cannot read the opening credits. There's actually an AI voice that reads the credits to us. And we get to see kind of like these audio lines jumping, and they do some really cool stuff for this opening sequence that immediately made me go, huh, never seen that before. I am intrigued, and man, it just kept getting better from there. So like I love that. It was something new, something I hadn't seen, kind of creative. And like I said, kind of got me going, all right, I am intrigued real early here. I love the look of this movie, the futuristic world, the architectural style is just so cool. Even the style of cars, the way cars function, the technology of the houses that are in there, and all of the different set pieces. Just the look of the movie is phenomenal. I love the lighting and the filters and all of the camera work that Winnell uses throughout the film. It all just works so well, and like I said, very, very stylish. Notably, the lighting in Gray's apartment, after the accident happens, I just love the lighting and filter look that we get as we're kind of moving through his new apartment. I love the shot. There's a shot of him when he re-enters the house, and it's kind of, you get like those camera mounts that can mount to your chest so that it doesn't move, but everything around you moves, but you stay stationary. It's that, but on the backside. And I want to say I may have read that they might have used an iPhone. I may have heard that somewhere, but whatever they used, really cool shot where it's basically that stationary kind of look, but it's from the back. And just like, again, one of those things that just kind of drop in there and makes you go, ooh, like something I haven't really seen before. I like that. And there's a lot of that. Your eye catches tons of stuff like that. There's also this sequence where as we lead to our, kind of climatic action sequence, we get this really, really cool lighting of red and blue in a room for this cool fight sequence. And like I said, just all that stuff looks gorgeous and just works so well from a stylistic place. As I said, the action set pieces in this movie are phenomenal. The choreography and the camera work around these action sequences, mind-blowing. The way they look, the way Logan Marshall Green moves, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Just all of it, everything that has to do with the action is wonderful, and I love that, Winnell, who comes from a horror background, was not afraid to go in on practical makeup and gore. And some of the death sequences in these action fights are like, oh, wow, oh, like you get a lot of those, and I love that stuff in a movie like this. So that gory violence, and it was great because, like I said, I was there opening night. Not a packed out house, but a pretty good crowd. And the first kill comes, and you literally sit there and you're not quite sure what you are looking at, and then you realize you're like, oh no, dude in front of me just goes, and pardon my language, but if dude in front of me just goes, oh yeah, man, that shit was gangsta. That is the best description you could give the violent. Like the gory violence in this movie. It is straight up gangsta, man. Oh God, like I said, you doesn't need any more words. That sums it all up. And the hand-to-hand combat is just unreal. Like I said, the movements that Logan Marshall Green uses in this movie are unbelievable. Because STEM is software, it's reconnecting the neural pathway. To make his arms and legs move. So there are moments like when Gray is in control, where like you can tell he's thinking like move arm, and then the arm moves, and like there's just this like a split second delay to everything he does, and it's almost like the computer is processing what he wants. But STEM also has the ability to take over Gray's body, and when it does that, it is fast and seamless and perfect and very robotic. And it's a totally different way of maneuvering and moving on screen than when Gray is in control. And it's the same actor doing both things, and it's amazing and phenomenal. Just all of that works so well. And again, just creates this very interesting style that I've never seen before. There's also a wonderful car chase sequence. I was not expecting a chase sequence, but we get one in the movie. And what's really cool about this is Gray is driving the muscle car, so there's no technology. So STEM can basically patch itself into anything that's technology or computer based. So it could drive the car theoretically, and in this situation, it can't because it's an old muscle car, and that gives Gray the ability to actually shine a little bit in the movie because STEM does most of the work. So it's cool to see Gray kind of get a moment where it's like, oh man, this has nothing to do with STEM. This is all Gray, and I loved that. Then there's the upgraded abilities. The upgraded are kind of how these people who have technology inserted into them, which is what our collective group of bad guys have all had done, and they're called upgraded. So the upgraded, their abilities are cool, man. They do some really neat stuff. It's not really a spoiler because it's been in the trailers. But a bunch of the guys in this group of bad guys, their gun is in their hand. So the gun actually kind of is maneuvered through the arm, and like you can load it like a shotgun right in the bicep, and all of it's practical. It's just practical makeup that's put on there so that you can see it, and it looks so realistic and so cool. It's just such an interesting, like, boom, I can shoot you, done. And that's what happens to Gray's wife, unfortunately. But I mean, that stuff's awesome. They have the ability to use nanobots, or at least Fisk does, our main bad guy. He has the ability to use nanobots that leave his body and can affect other people, which is a really cool thing. And then, of course, everything that Stem does in this movie is amazing. So let's get in to Stem and his human vessel, Gray. They make this movie. Like I said, Logan Marshall Green is absolutely phenomenal in this film. And he is the reason this film works, because he went all in, man. He bought into it. He clearly put the work in, and what you get from him really drives this movie. And then when we learn that Stem can talk to Gray, no one but Gray can hear Stem, which is nice because it adds some humor where there are moments where Gray's having a conversation with nobody, at least to the surrounding world. In reality, he's talking to Stem. And that just gears up such a cool relationship. It provides a lot of humor moments, a lot of plot, a lot of spots to kind of have fun and get you to laugh a little bit. And their relationship and their banter back and forth is really, really awesome. But when we're talking about Logan Marshall Green, dude, his acting is just superb in this flick, man. His emotional responses and a few psychological breaks are just like, you just watch his face and you're just like, buying everything that you're selling me right now. So I love all the emotional things that he goes, very, very strong. His physical acting, as I mentioned, unbelievable. The way he moves, I would love to sit down and be like, bro, how did you pull this off? Because it looks like there's actually a computer running your body in this movie, and it's awesome. You can really tell that he put the work in. And I'm really hoping that this is a movie that turns him into kind of a breakout action star. Like I said, I think this movie sets up itself in a universe where you can make more of these films. I would love to see Logan Marshall Green continuing to kick ass. Like I said, I want more of his ass-kicking sequences, so I'm totally in if you do a sequel. I am there. Then, of course, Stem, as I mentioned, he can talk to Gray, and that he is voiced by Simon Maiden, and man, excellent work from his excellent voice work from Maiden. This very nuanced, it delivers really, really well. Again, when you're an AI voice, you only are as good as whoever is giving you that voice. And Maiden crushes it. As I said, I love when Stem is in control, and his movements are amazing. Again, that goes back to Logan Marshall Green being able to do both, and it's just wonderful to watch, like the way he switches his movements. There's at one point in the movie, Stem basically tells him that, like, Aaron can monitor all of our movements. We have to hack into me so that won't happen anymore, so he can't track us. And that sequence is phenomenal. And like I said, and then the fact that Stem, then at that point, so there's this thing where Stem has to ask for permission to do things, and Logan and Gray is having some issues with killing people. And Stem is like, we can't. We have to finish this. Like, if you hack me, then we're not being tracked by Aaron anymore. And then what ends up happening is it can take over Gray's entire body. And I love where that takes us in the story. Really, really top notch. Then the supporting cast in this is really great. Like I said, Asha, who's Gray's wife, played by Melanie Vallejo, very, very strong. I love all the moments that they have together in the movie for the brief time that they have them. But she's really, really good. Aaron, who's played by Harrison Gilbertson, man, he is the perfect amount of, like, innocent and creepy, totally playing into that world of, like, young geniuses that are kind of off a little bit. He plays that role really, really well. And because he's able to deliver that in such a good way, especially his emotional reactions or facial reactions to things that happen in the movie, really set up some nice things for him down the stretch. And then if the guy who almost stole the movie from Logan Marshall Green, Benedict Hardy, who plays our main kind of bad guy, Fisk. Oh, he's phenomenal, man. I love everything that he's doing in this one. He's a great villain. The twist to his story is awesome, and his action sequences are among the best in the movie. When him and Gray go hand to hand, that's the best fighting that we get in the whole movie. I've just absolutely loved Benedict Hardy in this. And then story-wise, man, this movie works because it's a really emotionally strong story. We really can connect with our main character. We feel what he's feeling. We understand what he's going through. And that allows us to kind of take this emotional journey with him along with all this awesome action-packed, revenge stuff. The twists in the movie that happen, they all play really well and they work. I love that. I love the idea of having these competing tech groups, and that plays into Gray's story, and that works really, really well. Especially as you start to find out what actually happens with the accident and where things are going, it just adds some nice extra layers there. And I just love that, in general, this movie doesn't hold back, man. Winnell went for it. Logan Marshall Green went for it. And you can tell, man, they just, the payoff, because everybody that was involved bought in and went for it, is just beyond fantastic. Like I said, it's a really awesome beginning of a really awesome universe that Winnell's building. And as we've seen, he loves these serial type movies, right? Saw, Insidious. Man, give me a little bit of a horror action sci-fi flick like this. I'll take 2, 3, 4, 5. Rattle them off. If you keep them up on this level, I'm all in on whatever you want to do, and I am certainly all in on Logan Marshall Green. So that's it, man. What an interesting, clever, fun, action-packed, just, for me, an all-around A film for the summer. Go see Upgrade if you haven't. That's all the C-Man's got to say. What do you guys got to say? If you have actually gotten out to see Upgrade, please hit those comments below. Let me know what you thought of the movie. If you haven't, have I enticed you enough to go? I really, really hope I have, because this film needs to be seen. It's wonderful. Really, really enjoyable. You will not regret it. As always, if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and the little bell so you get alerts every time I make a new video. For the C-Man Cinema Sit Down, I am the C-Man. I am signing off. Peace!